The second example is taken from an advanced grammar and stylistics course. So the composition course was Heather's course, this is mine. So the goals were to study grammar through texts, through literary texts specifically, to link the advanced grammar course to others in the curriculum so that students could see that they could study literary texts from multiple perspectives, not just from the perspective of literary analysis necessarily. And then, of course, the other goals were to develop advanced reading, writing, and speaking competencies. The course was organized into 8 units. Each unit included a chapter from a grammar book and 2 to 3 excerpts from Exercices de Style, which is a book by Queneau, where he tells the same story 99 times using different grammatical structures and stylistic devices. It's a fantastic teaching tool. It's been translated into multiple languages, Spanish, English, whatever you can think of. And the general unit structure, just to give you an idea, well, let me tell you first of all what the instructional focus was. So again, it was a progression. So every unit started with reading-related tasks grounded in the literary excerpts, moved on to grammatical analysis and practice, sort of discrete point practice, and then to writing-related tasks, also based in the literary text. And then, of course, another instructional focus was the interpretation and use of linguistic and schematic resources found within the text. The general structure of each unit was that students began by analyzing the literary text, including identifying salient grammatical features and exploring form-meaning relationships. There was a brief discussion of grammatical rules of the grammar that was demonstrated in the text that they had read, a few short mechanical practice exercises like sentence completion or closed passages, text-based grammar exercises like identification of synonyms, text embellishment or genre comparison, and then finally creative writing activities based on the literary text that students had read. So let me walk you through an example. So in this particular course, students created their own exercice de style in 4 parts. So they did 4 creative writing tasks based on the excerpts that they had read. They write an interview, a formal interview, like a police interrogation. They write a formal letter. They write a text that makes predictions about the future, and then they do a descriptive text. Those are the 4 genres that they did. So students wrote the same story 4 times in 4 different genres. The story they tell is the one depicted in the graphic text that you have there. This is a book by Matt Madden, and he tells the same story 99 times in cartoons, basically. Okay, so they read 2 or 3 of these cartoons, and then that's the basis for their own exercice de style. And what they do is, based upon the cartoons that they read, they complete a matrix of information related to the storyline: who, what, where, when, how. And they come up with adjectives, verbs, adverbs, all different kinds of vocabulary words that they can use as a bank to be able to tell this story 4 different times in 4 different genres. And so they constantly revise this matrix over the course of the semester and go back to it as a tool for writing. The other tool for writing is the available designs in each text that we focus on in the reading activities. So for example, when they write the police interrogation, they have to focus on writing in a formal tone because it's a formal interview, and they also have to focus on using inversion in questions, which is tricky in French. Okay. And then with these tools in place, they move on to initial drafting of the text. So they write their police interrogation. They again go through peer review and instructor conferences, so you've got critical framing. They revise, overt instruction, and then the final part of the project is to reflect about the reading and writing process in a reflective journal entry. So instead of doing a round table, they have to talk about what their experience was and how the reading and the writing contributed to their overall grammatical development. So they responded to prompts like the following. What activities done in and out of class have most helped you to learn grammatical forms and how to use them to express your ideas? Or, in your opinion, has the reading of the Queneau text and the preparation of creative writing helped you better understand the grammar we've discussed? Please explain. And this followed every writing task that they did. Okay, so some student reactions you have on this slide. So these are pulled from a 2006 article of mine where I wrote about this project, or an iteration of the project. And then the 2 on the left are quotes from a manuscript that I'm farming out right now. So that's why it just says MS up there. But the quotes speak to personal interpretations of text through reading and writing. the importance of grammar as a tool for expression as opposed to something that just needs to be memorized, which I think is fantastic that they saw that, and also understanding choices that an author makes and the impact that that has on meaning. So again, you can see really positive results of these kinds of activities for learners. This approach to reading, writing, and grammar instruction through literature and creative production can facilitate creation of form-meaning connections through interactions with textual content. Specifically, engaging learners in the act of meaning design through activities grounded in the 4 pedagogical acts and the learning processes of interpretation, collaboration, problem solving, and reflection allows them to move beyond simple replication of available designs such as grammar and vocabulary to instead make form-meaning connections through textual interpretation and transformation. Findings from my unpublished study show that students perceive multiliteracies-oriented activities positively and further recognize the link between these activities and improvement of grammatical knowledge and reading and writing competencies. Furthermore, they were able to see grammar as a tool for creative expression rather than simply as a set of rules to be mastered, which was like a huge victory for me. So the takeaway from everything I've talked about today, reading to write, and specifically reading literature to write creatively, can further students' linguistic development and move them toward advanced level competencies. The Multiliteracies framework and the concept of literacy provide a coherent framework for implementing these kinds of activities across the undergraduate curriculum, such that we simultaneously attend to language development and increased knowledge of literary cultural content throughout students' program of study. And I thank you for your attention, and I welcome your questions and comments. Go ahead. Oh.
Could you repeat the question? We're going to be louder.
I'm sorry?
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question. Could you please elaborate more on how you structure the peer review, the instruction conferences, and then the round table for the first?
Yeah, so the question was, how was the peer review, instructor conferences, and roundtable structured? I did not teach the composition course, so I can't tell you how the roundtable was structured. I can tell you how I structured peer review and instructor conferences in the advanced grammar course. Is that okay? Yeah. So the peer review actually varied quite a bit because based on student interest and need. I surveyed students over the course of the semester to try to find out what it was that they wanted most from the peer review and instructor conferences, and we alternated. So not every draft had peer review and instructor conferences. They either had one or the other. So typically the instructor conferences, I would give them a moment to write down specific questions that they wanted to ask me related to the available designs and the this overall format of the creative writing that they were doing. So this is related to this project. So that I could really focus them on that particular genre that they were writing in, and they weren't focusing so much on their content because the content was already solidified because it was the same content every time. For peer review, it was mostly focused on form, available designs, I want to say. So it was focused on the rhetorical or the organization of the genre, whether they had succeeded in replicating the genre. It was focused on whether they had successfully used the targeted available designs in the text. So for this one, it was the formality of the tone and inversion and questions. And they filled out a paper with specific questions, and they worked in small groups and passed the paper a minimum of 2 times. And then at the end, collaborated in their group and shared the comments that they had gathered. That was basically how I structured it. Okay? Yep. Other questions? Yeah.
It's really basically just for repetition. So in the exercises to STEAM, this one here, you have them doing four different styles. The first was the formal interview, and I missed the second, and I got their prediction about the future. So
Yeah. So the question was, what were the 4 genres that students wrote in? So the first was a police interrogation. They had read a text called Interrogatoire, which basically targeted questions. And so that was my focus, my grammatical focus in that. And so they wrote their own police interrogation related to the graphic text that they had read. The second one was a formal letter. It was called Lettre officielle. in the book. The third one was predictions of the future. The context was you go to see somebody with a crystal ball. So it tells this story. You will ride the bus. You will bump into somebody on the bus. You'll get into a fight with that person on the bus. It was kind of like that. So that was the third one that they wrote. It was called Pronostication. And then the fourth one was called Animisme. And that was basically a description, but it was using disjunctive pronouns. So it'd be like, him, he did this. Him, he did that. Him, he, blah, 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 which is a very common structure in spoken French. So the available designs for that were obviously the use of dislocation, but also sort of a more informal spoken language kind of tone was basically what it was. So. Anything else? Yeah.
I've got a question just about how you kind of conceptual distinctions, like when you look on the one side, I mean, one of your slides, it was really illustrative where you linguistic qualities, and then another one where you have schematic qualities. And you know, I was just curious. I mean, like, this is the traditional way that people kind of divide it up. And I noticed that you're kind of you're using that, I think, in a heuristic way. You know, like you're on the one. I mean, the overall design is to try to put all that together, really.
Right, as opposed to, I mean, it's teased.
Grammar is one thing.
Exactly, and it is teased out in the graphic, and it's a continuum, right? It's difficult to put that on a PowerPoint slide, the continuum. So, but yes, it's not teasing these things out as separate. Form and meaning are not separate. They're on a continuum, and they're interrelated, right? So you can't be thinking about particular cultural content without thinking about the way it's expressed through grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah. That's the point of the whole of the exercises you have at the end, right? Is that it
exactly
what we traditionally call grammar, like present tense, past tense, you know, by putting it situating within particular
with an authentic context, yeah. And it was, students had a hard time with it at the beginning. I'm not going to lie. I had some very traditional students in that class who were sort of over 40, let's say, although that includes the speaker, so, the over 40 who had very traditional language learning backgrounds. You learn the rule, you memorize it, you apply it in a rote practice activity, and then you move on. And so for them, I was not doing that. And they were very resistant at first. And if you read the reflective journals in the beginning, they were like, I don't think these activities are helping my grammar at all. I don't think so, because, you know, memorize, memorize, memorize. And then as the semester progressed and you read the reflections, they're like, wow, I really learned how this worked in context and why the author made this choice and how it changed the meaning from one text to another. So you saw this transformation. Once they figured it out, they just were like, they had never seen it before.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this seems to be a real advance on kind of process methods of pedagogy. It kind of came up in the 70s where you would just put people in the situation and just have them write. I mean, you're still using kind of those traditional
process approaches. Process approaches are much more cognitively oriented, whereas the multiliteracies approach is cognitively, socioculturally, and linguistically oriented. The sociocultural aspect is kind of absent from process approaches, right? Because learning isn't seen as socially situated in process approaches. It's all about what's happening in the brain, basically, yeah.
You had a fascinating source here because the genres were different, but the content is the same. You say that you work this as well to have different genres, but the content is different each time.
Oh, well, I mean, that's kind of what happened in this course. Actually, the content's different and the genre's different every time in this one. And it worked fine. There are fewer modules. So students spend more time working with the genre. I didn't repeat the question, I'm sorry. Students spend more time working with the genre before they're asked to write. So, I mean, and again, I did not teach this course, so I can't comment on the success of switching from genre to genre and topic to topic. But they had plenty of time, this is over the course of an entire semester, where they read only 4 genres. So they have tons of time to understand that genre before they have to write it.